it looks like somebody is finally starting to get it.
As Super Tuesday election results trickled in last night, the liberal media intelligentsia provided a case study of what denial looks like. Don't be fooled by the ladies of MSNBC joining forces to jovially mock.
Increasingly, from the Tea Party on, they're voting on race. They're voting on this idea of an invasion of brown people over the border. They're just voting specifically on racial animus. At this stage, it isn't about economics.
No, which is why Trump killed the immigration bill.
Lakin Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal.
But that's not a big thing, okay? What's the big thing about
it? No, I actually wasn't even going to ask about that. I was just going to ask more about
Anna Kasparian. And once again, we're doing a video where we actually have to give her some praise. There's a reason why it is that it says very, very big, bold letters. She checks MSNBC because, quite frankly, she did, in fact, check MSNBC on this take. Now, guys, before we get started, I want you to know right now that this right here is part one of two separate takes. The reason why it's two separate takes is because, well, the actual segment itself was 17 minutes long, and it was a pretty daggone long segment. It was a very informative segment where Anna talked about the cost of illegals, and of course, not just the cost of illegals as far as money is concerned, but the cost on the actual communities themselves. Now, there are some things that obviously she said that I did not fully agree with, but still at the same time, I have to actually give her some points for finally telling the truth. She also talked about how it is that the illegal immigration issue is sending a lot of Democrat voters, longtime Democrat voters, to the Republican Party. Now, I did do a video recently on the polling data that came out, and I talked about how it was that a lot of Biden voters are switching to the Trump side come 2024. A lot of these, of course, are registered Democrats who, quite frankly, had enough of the party, and they realized that they were getting a lot more money when Trump was in office. And it also includes a lot of people who are, in fact, fed up with this migration situation, of course, fed up with the border crisis, which, of course, the Democrat politicians love to point at Governor Greg Abbott. He's the problem in this entire situation. But in reality, Joe Biden could fix this entire issue if he just simply closed the border. Greg Abbott is just sending migrants to these blue cities who, by the way, are sanctuary cities, whom, by the way, said these people were welcome. And, of course, a lot of these cities are saying, no, we need you guys gone. We'll talk more about that towards the end of the video because, obviously, there's a lot of hypocrisy here. But still, though, why in the world are we at this point? Well, let me refresh you guys' memory from last week at the State of the Union address.
clearly ad-libbed moments was during the section about immigration. And I'm sure you saw the buttons that your colleagues across the aisle had. And he had one of those buttons. We believe it was given to him by Marjorie Taylor Greene. And when she said something to him during his speech, he responded. I think we have that. Let's listen to it.
I didn't see any Republican buttons.
Lakin Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of the thousands of people being killed by illegals? To her parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself. I understand.
Now, you should have said undocumented, but that's not a big thing, okay? What's the big thing about it?
No, I actually wasn't even going to ask about that. I was just going to ask more about the moment. But you do think that he should have said undocumented? That wasn't going to be my question.
Well, we usually say undocumented. He said illegal. I don't think it's a big deal.
Okay.
I don't think it's a big deal.
But more broadly.
You use the word illegal when talking about the man who allegedly killed Lakin Riley.
An undocumented person. And I shouldn't have used illegal. It's undocumented. And look.
Oh, the dude was flat out illegal. He was an illegal that you brought in. You could have at least said that he wasn't illegal. But once again, though, progressives obviously have a hold on the Biden administration. Anna Kasparian can obviously see this, and I believe that she's beginning to rethink the whole idea of progressivism. But we'll talk more about that in video number 2. Let's go ahead and get back on topic. Nancy Pelosi obviously had a little bit less to drink before she went on air. You can kind of spot that with her voice. But still, though, when you screw up the name of a young girl who was killed by a migrant who was let go by District Attorney Alvin Bragg, the woke DA in New York City, and of course, you've got a migrant crisis, obviously it looks pretty bad. It looks a lot worse when you say that the girl's name was Lakin Riley, when in fact her real name is Lakin Riley. And of course, the people on Twitter, especially NFL memes, they chose to have a bit of a ball with this, which I thought was completely distasteful. Pat McAfee show even brought it up, and I thought about doing a video going after him over it because, quite frankly, it was stupid. It's not a good idea to take light of a tragedy like this or make light of it, especially given the fact that Lakin Riley is still alive and well, and Lakin Riley is dead. She's dead because of one of those migrants that Biden let in. 2022, the guy was arrested, and of course, he was let go in New York because they didn't have enough space to keep him locked up. And of course, his wife is also an illegal as well. But we've covered that there in previous videos. Still, though, at the same time, though, you got to ask yourself a question. Why is this right here so out of control? Well, it's because of the radical left, which, of course, I've got to point out. There's a lot of hypocrisy here, especially with Anna and Jink, especially given the fact that they were on the side of bringing these migrants over. I think in Anna's case, she's living in California, probably sees now exactly how bad it is, because a lot of these people live in bubbles and they don't exactly live in the real world. But still, though, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to the base. You guys obviously heard Nancy Pelosi say earlier that Joe Biden should have referred to this guy as an undocumented migrant. And Joe Biden, of course, he said the exact same thing, when in reality, he said the right thing when he said illegal. But of course, if you listen to the full context of the State of the Union, you would then hear him turn right back around and say, my heart goes out to the family as someone who's lost kids, even though he loves to tell us that Beau Biden died overseas in Iraq when Beau Biden died here at home in a bed, on a deathbed of brain cancer. And of course, Hunter Biden never really and truly actually did any real time. He enlisted, he had some drug problems, this, that, and the other. Ended up getting on the border, Burisma, and getting a lot of illegal, well, not illegal, but he ended up getting a lot of dirty money, shady crap. No, that's stuff. Not going to cover it in the top of this video here. But still, though, that base, they are so emboldened to that progressive base that they can't even say what it really and truly is, which was an illegal immigrant, an illegal alien. And of course, YouTube will probably find a way to also try to demonetize this video, which is another reason why it is I'm kind of making a part 2 to this. But still, though, Anna, she seems to have finally figured it out that this is not exactly a winning strategy for the left, as you guys will see here in a second. So after Super Tuesday, of course, the mainstream media, MSNBC, what do? Well, here you go.
Increasingly, from the Tea Party on, they're voting on race. They're voting on this idea of an invasion of brown people over the border. They're just voting specifically on racial animus. At this stage, it isn't about economics.
No, which is why Trump killed the immigration bill.
Correct.
That's why. And because otherwise, he can't run against the other and brown people and people who don't look like him. I mean, if you look at some of these exit polls, I mean, I live in Virginia. Immigration was the #1 issue. I mean, again, these could change in Virginia.
Well, Virginia does have a border with West Virginia. Very contested area.
Build the wall.
As Super Tuesday election results trickled in last night, the liberal media intelligentsia provided a case study of what denial looks like. Don't be fooled by the ladies of MSNBC joining forces to jovially mock.
White people bad, white people bad, white people bad. We vote on race, vote on race, vote on. Are you sure that in the state of Virginia, which by the way, Jen Psaki brought up, are you sure that the state of Virginia, who recently also had another situation where a migrant assaulted a young girl, Loudoun County, a county where Trump's primary votes shot through the roof and Biden's were way down. Very, very important to pay attention to on election night because I have a feeling the turnout's low enough on the Democratic side. You never know what might happen in that state. It's not that far gone yet, but still at the same time, we could have that conversation at a later date. Immigration is obviously an issue. You got the Lakin Riley situation. It was a situation back in 2016, 2015 timeframe, especially when it came to Kate Steinle, of which, by the way, Republicans didn't even want to pass that law because they're just as bad as the neoliberals at this point in time. They're just as bad as the progressives, in my actual opinion. They really truly are at this moment in time, if you really sit back and think about it. But obviously, Anna is seeing that this strategy is not exactly a working strategy for the Democratic Party, which is also kind of funny, too, because Jink finally dropped out. But still, at the same time, though, let's get through this little bit of monologue here and let's react to it. And let's see exactly what's really and truly going on with Ms. Kasparian.
Because if one looks closely enough, you can see that Wojak mask slipping. I suspect they're actually panicking about the vulnerabilities of the Democratic Party as we barrel toward the general election. They absolutely should be panicking, by the way. Unfortunately, instead of hearing voters out, the women of MSNBC have chosen ignorance and denial instead.
Every election cycle, particularly when there's a Democratic incumbent, we get reminded about the borders. And the borders become a thing again. And then if there's a Republican in office, we don't think about them anymore. Yeah. It's the deficit and the border. Like you make these things an issue. You make them into boogeymen. You make them into something that grabs you from under the bed at night as soon as you wake up. As long as there's a Democratic incumbent to blame on it, you make sure that nothing's ever done to fix either. And then you hope that people stop talking about them once you've got a Republican in office.
Now, look, I'm sure that there have been many examples of political opponents to Democrats exaggerating claims of immigration, but this ain't it.
You know, I used to say that Rachel Maddow looked a lot like Jerry Seinfeld, but now she's starting to look a lot more like Stephen Colbert. Can't put my finger on it. I already talked about the audacity of Joy Reid. I've already talked about the audacity of Rachel Maddow and Jen Psaki. But I find it very refreshing that Anna Kasparian is starting to point this out. I really and truly find it refreshing that somebody on the opposite side of the aisle is saying, whoa, what are you doing here? I mean, you don't get bees with vinegar. You get them with honey. It's something that I've basically wondered about for a very long time. Why in the world would they use this type of language? Don't you want these people to vote for you? Well, the truth be told is that's not their case. What they want to do is they want to dehumanize you is what they want to do. They want to dehumanize you as a person. Where do you think the term Christian nationalist came from? They're using that right there to add a negative connotation to dehumanize you, the conservative, the person who disagrees. It just so happens to be that a lot of moderates and a lot of left-leaning moderates are starting to come over to the right. And that also includes black people and Hispanics, especially Hispanics who came to this country, had to work to get their citizenship. And now they're seeing a bunch of migrants coming across the border who, quite frankly, don't deserve citizenship, use our economy to send money back to their home rather than putting it into our economy, using also other Hispanics' taxpayer dollars, Cuban Americans, Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, using their taxpayer dollars to send it back to the native lands. By the way, these lands are also sending cartels, they're sending gang members, and of course, they're all socialist crap holes. I think what's happening is that Hispanics are waking up and saying, whoa. You're going to come over here, and they're going to give you citizenship, and we had to work our butts off to get citizenship. I think that Anna's starting to see that this is not exactly what we call fair. Let me bring this up here soon, but Biden's Super Tuesday numbers were pretty bad. Now, I can already hear somebody saying, well, he's the incumbent, he doesn't really need any additional votes. Okay, bear with me really quick on this one. When you are the incumbent president of the United States, it still means that they're still going to be voting for you in the primary, because obviously you got to go through the nomination process, which, by the way, the Democratic Party has pretty much already shut down their primary in some states. They basically already rigged it for Biden to win, even though the other challengers didn't really have much of an opportunity, that rather being Marianne Williamson. One of them, of course, was Janet Younger, who dropped out recently. And, of course, this also includes that guy, Dean Phillips, or whatever his name is, the guy from Minnesota. Yeah, he's so unforgettable I can't even name his name. But a lot of people, you have to vote in these primaries so that way you can ensure that you get the candidate that you want, at least down ballot. Biden's overall voter numbers in this election cycle so far have been pretty bad. Now, in Nevada, his numbers were up. In New Hampshire, his numbers were up more than what they expected. But in Iowa, it was down, of course, because they did their primary last. South Carolina, his turnout was absolutely horrible. And his turnout on Super Tuesday was pretty daggone bad. In Michigan, you had over 110,000 voters vote non-committed. In North Carolina, my home state, you had right around 50,000 vote non-committed. In Texas, there were a lot of people who voted non-committed. Fact of the matter is that Joe Biden is beholden to this progressive base, and you guys can obviously see it. I mean, let me play it one more time for you guys. What's going on is that the Democratic Party realizes that they're losing regular voters. And what I mean by regular voters is that they're losing whites, black, and Hispanics. Come to find out that Hispanics don't like what you call illegal migrants. Now, I understand that Hispanic could be a broader term nowadays. I actually somewhat agree with that guy that I don't really like at the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro, when he says that maybe we should start calling them by actual ancestry or origin, as far as like not just using Hispanic as an umbrella, as an overall term. But obviously, this person is obviously, this guy comes from Honduras, this guy comes from Cuba. I think we should maybe start considering that right there too, because after a while, you start to realize that it's not a monolith, okay? It's just the way that it is. I mean, there's the actual point here. But of course, black voters in Chicago, and of course, I've pointed this out in previous videos, black voters altogether, they are shifting more towards Donald Trump. I think, I wonder why that's the case. I mean, he's talking about building a wall. He's talking about sending these migrants back, especially these ones who are here illegally, the ones that are getting the benefits, which quite frankly, they don't put into the U.S. economy. They send them to their native lands. And of course, you've got the gang issue, which we will talk about more so on Wednesday. But of course, we've talked about the crime. We've talked about the migrant situation on several occasions. Just build a freaking wall, reinforce that bad boy, close the damn border, and that right there be it. But of course, the left, they asked for this. They wanted these migrants. And of course, now the migrants are all over the place. So it makes me almost wonder if Anna is really and truly trying to give these people political advice, or she's trying to point out the fact that these people are, in fact, trying to cope with the fact that they're probably going to get destroyed this November. Or is it possible that Anna herself is beginning to feel the effects of this? Now, we'll get more to the latter, what I just said here in a second, but let's watch a little more.
Border in just 1 month. And there are local communities who have been really struggling to appropriately respond to the influx of migrants who have arrived into their cities. And look, for viewers who have convinced themselves that the denial demonstrated by the gaggle of gals on MSNBC is in no way indicative of progressives, I have unfortunate news for you.
The idea that Republicans, in order to win an election, say we need to hermetically seal the border when they know that is economic self-sabotage to the U.S. economy. And they are saying, let's.
It is. By the way, AOC recently got approached by some New Yorkers over the migrant, well, it wasn't the migrant issue, it was actually the Palestinian-Israeli Gaza situation. But still at the same time, though, it kind of is an economical issue. You see, these migrants are taking the benefits that are being given to them by the taxpayer, because the taxpayer is being forced to pay for this, especially those who live in New York, those who live in Chicago, those who live in LA. Really, it's every taxpayer in the country itself, but more so in those cities, which, by the way, they did ask for this with their vote for Biden. Some of them probably didn't think he would actually do it, but still at the same time, they're taking that money and not putting it into the U.S. economy. They're buying the bare essentials to get by here, and then they're sending the money back to their families. Now, I've talked about this in previous videos, and also to go on top of this, it lowers the overall wages, which, by the way, we'll get to here in a second, because at the end of the day, it's cheap labor. It's almost like these people are trying to create a slave force. But of course, at the same time, though, you've also got people thinking that they're trying to do this to whites. Don't worry, we'll do a video on that at a later date. I personally think what the hell is going on, and I've called it on several occasions, is that the migrants are being brought in to replace an entirely different voting bloc altogether. And I think I can give you guys a bit of a correlation to that right there when I do my immigration video, because obviously the political future and political landscape is going to be discussed in that video. But still, though, AOC,
let's do it anyway, while ginning up this false narrative about this being a crisis. And there is not only no moral calculation, there is no economic calculation, there is no logical calculation, there is only a political calculation. And that political calculation is we are going to keep whining about it. Mm-hmm. We are going to keep pretending this is a crisis.
Pretending that this is a crisis. Look, I'm sad to say that Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is wrong. What's really unsettling is that she should know there's a migrant crisis. After all, she represents a district in New York where local officials have struggled to find shelter for the 171,000 plus migrants who arrived in the city recently. AOC herself addressed the migrant crisis just last September in front of the Roosevelt Hotel in New York City. Now you tell me if this doesn't look like a crisis to you.
Increase federal resources to cities and municipalities dealing with this issue. The second is to allow for work authorizations so that the folks in here can get to work and start supporting themselves as soon as possible. They are prevented from getting jobs, they are prevented from employment, and that is part of the strain on our public systems.
Yeah, barriers for who? For who? For us? For the United States? No, you come down. You're complicit in destroying our city. You come down, you own breaker. You never go to sleep at night. Everybody. Come here.
I let that one run a little bit longer. Obviously, there is a crisis. Okay, AOC, she's been at the center of this, but she's been at the center of this because, well, let me say that being at the center of this is maybe not the strongest way to put this. I'll put it this way here. She's been a champion to try to get the migrant crisis or get the migrants into New York, or at least when I said champion, I mean a champion for the left, but at the same time, now the left doesn't like her. They don't like her for several reasons. Nobody likes the girl. I personally told you guys how I feel about the chick. She's a ditzy drama queen. It's just the truth of the matter. And of course, when you go the AOC, crazy communist, crazy progressive route, after a while, that voting base will eventually begin to shrink. Anna is obviously taking note of this, but we'll talk more about the other side of this angle in a second. The thing is this right here. New Yorkers did not realize that Biden was serious when he kept on telling people to surge the border. He did not realize that he was serious when he was basically saying, look, man, let all the migrants come in. I mean, if I recall correctly, these same politicians, I want to say that these people guaranteed free health care to illegals. They guaranteed free health care to illegals, free abortion access, all that type of stuff there. But yet the American people don't even get that. Look, I'm a veteran, okay? I've got the VA, but still, though, I've got to go through a process and all that type of stuff. It, quite frankly, is a pain in the ass. If you really and truly want free health care in the United States, then just go join the military. But let me also tell you something else, too, about that. It's a bit of a nightmare. And, of course, if you had free health care in the United States, it would be just like the VA to do procedures, operations, stuff like that right there, the paperwork, all that type of stuff there. We may cover that in another video. They've gotten better in some ways, but still at the same time, it's not the easiest process in the world. The fact of the matter is this right here. The country has spent way too much money, especially to the point to where New York City has got to, how do I say this? They are not allowed to have the next 5 recruiting classes. They have to actually cut the next 5 NYPD recruiting classes, academies. So therefore, they're going to have less cops on the street. And this summer, when it starts to get hot, the sanitation issue is also going to be bad as well, given the fact that New York City made cuts to their sanitation department. Which makes me wonder what's next. Is fire next? Is EMS next? Which I understand that New York has their own fire department and EMS combo, but still, you got to wonder what programs are next. It's also pretty crappy, especially given the fact that a lot of New Yorkers who live in very, very low-income areas or don't really have access to an actual full-time job, especially in this economy, which they keep on telling us that more jobs are being created, yet they hide the fact that most of the jobs that are being created are less than 30 hours a week, and people got to go get 2 jobs a week. And some people still have got to get certain benefits to try to make ends meet, to kind of to try to cover the other sides of this economic puzzle that we're in. And of course, it's not working out to their benefit, especially given the fact of all the inflation. But once again, though, we, the taxpayer, we are flipping the bill for a bunch of migrants, a bunch of people who are already breaking the law, crossing over illegally. Same people, by the way, that Joe Biden told to surge the border. I mean, do you guys remember?
That we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard. That's who we are. We're a nation that says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you
figure I'd point that out before we go any further, that this guy wanted these people to surge the border. So you can't blame Greg Abbott for this. You can't blame, and even TYT acknowledged that Texas was not at fault for this. They even acknowledged, even Jink, I'll try to find the video, I'll try to put it in here, but even Jink Younger said we need to stop giving Texas all the burden. We need to stop putting all the burden on Texas. They have known that this migrant situation was a problem, okay? But then again, at the same time, though, they also cheerleaded for all these migrants to be here, which makes me wonder why it is that Anna has really and truly decided to go to the right on this issue and gone completely, how do I say this? It's almost like she's becoming more and more based on this issue, which makes me cringe to say, but fact of the matter is this right here. She's actually been getting more and more based on this issue, especially over the last year and a half. But let's watch a little bit more.
The angry individuals in that video will just be brushed off as deranged right-wing lunatics who were sent there to harass AOC and give the false impression, of course, that people are worked up about our broken immigration system, right? If you think that, you're also wrong, but that's okay, because anecdotal evidence is oftentimes extremely misleading. So let's actually take a step back and take a broader look at broad public opinion in New York. For example, a Quinnipiac University poll just last September found that 62% of voters said that they agreed with New York City Mayor Eric Adams' statement from September, where he said that an influx of migrants will destroy the city. I really hate the framing of that question, because it makes it seem like there's something inherently negative or nefarious about migrants, and there just isn't. Most of these people came to America to work hard and build better lives for themselves and their families. That takes tenacity, resilience, and the willingness to take risks that I admire. I'll always feel deep gratitude for having the privilege of growing up in Reseda, California.
To be honest with you guys, the truth about Anna is that she grew up in a very, very wealthy environment. And of course, she grew up in Reseda, California, like she mentioned there. We'll cover more of that on the other side. But the thing is this right here. New Yorkers were correct to feel, hey, look, man, this is going to destroy the city. All right, if you keep bringing in more and more migrants, after a while, it's going to destroy the city in every angle that you can possibly think of. One area it's going to destroy the city is not just with the police department, the overall amount of resources that need to be used to take care of these migrants, but you're also talking about the tourism industry. Tourism industry is pretty big in New York, not to mention the fact that they already kind of hurt their own tourism industry when they decided to ban coal ovens, or they decided to tell people that you need to pay a massive fee to have a coal oven. Pizza's a very, very big deal in New York City. Obviously, not everybody can afford the expensive restaurants that are in New York City, so what do? You go down the road and you go grab you some of the famed New York pizza. $4 a slice. Dirty water dog. It's not bad, actually. I've been in the city twice, but I'm going back. The fact of the matter is that the people who live inside the city, they know that it will actually destroy the city inside out. Like I said before, you're cutting your sanitation department, which also includes trash, which means the area is going to be much, much dirtier. We've talked about this in previous videos where the city of New York, a lot of these migrants, because they didn't like the fact that organizations made them food, charitable organizations, by the way, that the left loves to rail against, they tossed that food out. It's almost like you can't please these people. And then, of course, you got the situations that are happening at Randall Island, the situations that are happening in Harlem, the stabbings, all the crime that's being picked up. And you're also looking at the possibility of gangs forming, which, of course, we talked about in previous videos as well. And now we're going into summer where it's actually going to be a lot worse. You see, in wintertime, the problem is the actual weather. In summer, you're looking at the weather being mixed in with not just the attitudes, but of course the general discontent of the overall situation. Have you guys ever been inside of a city during the summer that's not clean? It stinks. When you have stinky stuff around the area, next thing you know, people begin to get crossed. Their tempers get a lot shorter, they lose patience, and the next thing you know, street fights break out, and some of these fights could get extremely violent. We've already talked about some of this on this channel, especially given the fact that now we know that subway crime in New York is up 13%, and now you're deploying the National Guard to these subways. It seems to me like the situation could obviously get much, much messier. Thank you guys on the left, and thank you all you people out there who didn't believe Biden would actually do this. Now the city of New York is pretty much falling apart. You've actually invited an actual crisis, not to mention the potential national security threats that could arise from all of this. I mean, at least Anna has suddenly decided to wake up to that there. But of course, at the exact same time, like I said before, these people, they wanted the migrants. That's the truth of the entire situation. They wanted it. They voted for it. They should have known that these people were, in fact, serious about bringing these migrants over. But then again, though, at the same time, though, as you guys will see in tomorrow's video, a lot of these people are changing their minds.
Growing up in Reseda, California, a community where the majority of residents consisted of Latino immigrants, they've enriched my life. I'm a child of immigrants myself, and we are a nation of immigrants. It's important to remember that. However, our immigration system is absolutely broken, and there are loopholes in our laws that human traffickers, unfortunately, are well versed in. These loopholes allow for the unmanageable influx of migrants into the country at a time when we don't have enough judges to process asylum claims. And this also comes at a time when we clearly have a shortage of housing for American citizens. According to that same Quinnipiac poll, a whopping 85% of New York City voters are either very concerned or somewhat concerned.
Brought the human trafficking element because they oftentimes tend to forget that children are being tracked, that women are being tracked basically as prostitutes, and also the kids are being trafficked too for not exactly non-nefarious means. The human trafficking of this situation is absolutely horrible, and who the hell would take advantage of this? Well, gangs and cartels. That right there is who the hell would take advantage of it. As I may have mentioned in the previous little bit, this right is a national security risk too. We've also talked about those who were not Hispanic that are coming in, those who are not from South America, those who are not from Mexico, but those who are coming in from the Middle East. But we'll cover that more in Wednesday's video on the whole gang element thing. The problem is this right here. We have an administration that's openly allowing people to come in for the sole purposes of leeching off the taxpayer. And I think that they're trying everything they can to create division so that way they can officially enact the full security state that they want to do. Oh, wait, why the hell did I let the cat? Well, never mind, it doesn't really matter. But of course, I'm a crazy conspiracy theorist if I say that. That right there is what's really going on here. They actually want the situation to get out of hand. But still, though, we may cover that out of the day. Maybe we'll talk about this in the immigration video. But still, at the same time, though, what's the ultimate end game? What's the ultimate result? What's the ultimate thing that ends up happening? Well, everybody eventually goes bankrupt. Everybody eventually goes broke because of all the money that's being put into a bunch of people that, quite frankly, should not be here.
City will not be able to accommodate the surge in migrants who have sought sanctuary in the city and their right to worry. The federal government has sent the city some resources, but hundreds of millions of dollars apparently ain't enough. New York City has received about $140 million in federal funding for shelters, which is more than any other city not on the southwest border. The White House told New York Governor Kathy Hochul in August that it cannot send more federal assistance to the state, blaming congressional hurdles for the inability. So New York is left to pick up the tab. And it ain't cheap, as local leaders in Denver have recently learned.
Oh, we'll cover Denver in the follow-up to this one, because I think the Denver situation is a microcosm. It's just another example of how bad things are getting. In Massachusetts, you've got migrants being brought into suburban homes. I wonder what the hell could go wrong there. Some of these open-air liberals want these people in there. They don't realize the type of risk that they're bringing in. It's not just the money factor, it's the crime factor, it's the national security factor. And I think what the hell is really and truly going on is that Anna Kasparian is at the point to where it, quite frankly, is too much. It's just too much. It's just way too much crap that we got to deal with. It's causing too many problems. She can actually see that the people are turning on this and turning on progressivism altogether. Or as the aristocratic utensil said in his video, also known as Spoon, he did a video on this, which I think he had to repost to Rumble. He said that Anna was not really and truly an actual leftist, that she, for the most part, is somebody who's been plagued or her brain has been plagued by Jink, basically filling it up with a bunch of nonsense. And she's beginning to wake up to the fact that most of what he told her was outright nonsense. Fact of the matter of this situation is that the migrant crisis is out of control. It's gotten too bad, and she can obviously see that people are turned off by this, and she's expecting a great big giant backlash to occur this November, which I'm pretty sure that it will happen. But we will talk more about the backlash portion. We will talk more about that in video number 2 on this issue. So make sure you guys stick around for that one too. Please leave a comment in the comment section. Please tell me what you guys think. Please tell me if you think Anna is correct. Also, something else too, please share the video. Please hit the notifications bell so that way you guys are notified when these videos come out. And I'll see you guys later.